All right, now when we finished the last example, one of the students said, well, Mr. Adams, where do you get the numbers from? So for this one, we have to, and I'm going to try to do it a little different than what the book does and see if it helps. We have to figure out the equation. But the equation is based on stuff. Okay? We remember that we've used this h comma k for a bunch of stuff, right? For the circle, it was the center, right? For the parabola, it was the vertex. But it's kind of like a central location. Now on cubics, it's actually where there is what we call an inflection point. But this is it right here, isn't it? Would you consider that kind of the center of the cubic? Yeah. So what does that tell you? Well, that point, -4, comma 1, is h equals -4, k equals +1. Now, they're telling us they want us to solve for 1 over b. We got to figure out what we plug in here to make this graph work. Okay? I'm going to solve it algebraically, and then we're going to use Desmos to kind of guess it. So I need to figure out then b somehow, some way. Now, do I know an x and a y value? Because I suspect I'll need to plug those in at some point in time, because that's what we did on our last problem. Do you guys see any x and y values? Yeah, on the thing. Now, the question is, do you use this one or this one? It doesn't matter. I'm going to pick this one. Does anybody care to guess why? Because it has a 0. 0 is so easy to use when I plug it in. So I'm going to say x equals -4.5. So before we go any further, did you see where all the numbers came from?
18K was grabbed from the middle point. XY was grabbed. XY was grabbed from the other 2 points.
Well, we just picked one. But yeah, you could do either one. Okay. Did you have a question?
No.
So now what we need to do is remember that this thing can be written as y. So I'm going to write the equation. I'm going to say y is equal to, in parentheses, 1 over b times the quantity x minus h, close parentheses, cubed, plus k. Then I'm just going to take those terms and plug them in. So my y value is 0. Then I've got 1 over b. I don't know what b is yet. Then for x, I have -4.5 minus my h value, which is -4 cubed, plus k, which is 1. You guys with me so far? Am I going too fast? So now, before we move any further, notice I have all numbers in one variable b, which means I can solve this and make it look like b equals some stuff. That's why I need to know all those values for all those other variables. So anyways, when you minus a minus, it becomes a plus. Remember to follow your order of operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Okay. So we do the work on the innermost parentheses first. What's -4.5 plus 4? -0.5. Very good. So the next thing I need to do, in order to figure out b, I've got to somehow separate this stuff. So what I'm going to do, and this might be a little tricky for you, I have this 1 over b in the cubes. How do you undo something that's cubed? Cube root. But before I do the cube root, I need to subtract 1 from both sides. So I get -1 is equal to 1 over b times the quantity, -0.5. And And actually, you know what? You can write it this way. This is kind of a different way to write it. You could write it like this. Negative 0.5 times 1 over b cubed. Okay? Now, I'm going to take the cube root of both sides. And when you do the cube root, that's an interesting phenomenon that we're going to do on the calculator. Now, you might say to yourself, well, Mr. Adams, we can't take a square root of a negative number. You're right. But this is a cube root. So this is why I told you to get your handy-dandy calculators. We cannot take an even root of a negative number, but we can take a cube root of a negative number. So go to math. See this little cube root symbol here, number 4?
Mm-hmm.
Hit enter. I'll put in -1. See how I did that? Now what we're saying is what number times itself a third time gives you -1. It's -1. And if you don't believe me, you're like, Mr. Adams, say it isn't so. You're a liar. Well, -1 cubed is the same as -1 times -1 times -1. A -1 times a -1 is a +1. A +1 times a -1 is still -1. So to take the cube root, we go backwards. It's -1. Okay? Now on the other side, I could separate this. When you take the cube root of a cube, they undo each other, so you're just left with -0.5 times the quantity 1 over b. So you divide by -0.5 on both sides. Okay? Now this will be an interesting phenomenon. Pull up your handy-dandy calculator, take -1 and divide that by -0.5, and I think it's +2. Does that make sense? All right. So this whole thing on the right-hand side is +2. And these cancel is equal to 1 over b. Now to solve for b, you do cross multiplying, right? What we're going to do is we're going to take that 2 and put it over 1. And then you cross multiply. That's how you get the b. So when you cross multiply, you say 2 times b is equal to 1 times 1, which is 1. 2b equals 1. And then you divide both sides by 2. We did all that work to find out that b equals 1/2. Okay? So if b equals 1/2, and I've got all these variables, let's write that in up here at the top. b equals 1/2. So that means that g of x is equal to the quantity 1 over b times the quantity x minus h cubed plus k. Or now we're going to plug in h and k and b. G of x is equal to 1 over 1/2. We'll unpack that in a second. Times the quantity x minus 4 cubed plus k. Oh, wait, what's k1, right? Well, this is a positive. Now, 1 divided by 1/2, if you're going, well, Mr. Adams, I don't know, that just looks confusing to me. Let's do it on the calculator. Hit the math button. Enter in a fraction. In the numerator, put 1. Now, in the denominator, guess what? We're going to hit math. And we're going to enter in a fraction in a fraction. What fraction are we entering in? 1/2. The answer is 2 because you're multiplying by the reciprocal. think about that. How many halves are there in one? When you divide 1 cup by halves of a cup, it's 2 halves, right? Does that make sense? If I have a cup of flour and then I distribute it into half cups, how many half cups would I have? 2. So 1 divided by 1/2 equals 2. So then this whole thing becomes 2 times the quantity. Well, hold on, that's sloppy handwriting. G of x is equal to 2 times the quantity x plus 4 cubed plus 1. Now, there's some extra work you could do. You could probably, that's how they have it in the back of the book. So that's how you do that problem. Are there any questions? I see you guys are starting to put your stuff away, getting ready to leave, even though we have 3 minutes left. Guys, we need to learn all the way up until the bell rings. All right. Good job. Thank you for being